Hi, my name is Stacey Dembo. I'm an attorney in private practice. I represent people in Social Security matters, and I'm here today speaking with Frank Tuzzolino, another attorney who also represents people in Social Security matters. And we're here at the Chicago Bar Association to talk about Social Security. Today is April 28th, 2015, so everything that we're going to be talking about today is current as of today. If you are watching this at a later date, some of the information that we're giving today may be outdated. But we are streaming live right now, so if you're watching and you have any questions for us, you can email us at cbalawdaylive@gmail.com, and we have someone that's going to be reading your questions and will interrupt us while we're talking. So feel free to email us your questions.
So Stacey, it's really good to see you again since our last TV appearance. I think some of the listeners would be interested in understanding what is Social Security. What does that mean when people say Social Security?
Sure. So the Social Security Administration is a federal agency, and the agency administers a variety of benefit programs. So under the umbrella of the Social Security Administration, there is the retirement benefit program, retirement insurance benefits. There is a disability insurance benefit program. There is the supplemental security income program. Those, I think, are the three most common programs. And then within each of those programs, there are different types of benefits that we're going to be talking about today.
So when people talk about, hey, I'm getting my Social Security, they could mean they're getting their retirement or their disability or SSI.
Yeah, I think people use the term Social Security to refer to the money that they receive.
Right.
And they may not even always understand like why they're getting it or what part of the trust fund it's being paid out of, because it's complicated and there are a variety of different ways that people can get benefits.
So why don't we talk about that? How does Social Security get its money to pay out these benefits? Where does this money come from?
It comes from taxes.
Okay.
When we're talking about retirement insurance benefits and disability insurance benefits, the taxes that any worker pays, it shows up on your pay stub as FICA, F-I-C-A, that money is going into the federal treasury, into a trust fund for your retirement or your disability. So
Part of it goes for retirement, part of it goes for disability, right?
I think it's two different trust funds.
Right.
So it goes into the trust fund, and then when you make a claim, when you apply for the benefits, if you qualify, then you start to draw the monthly benefit.
And your employer makes a contribution as well, right?
Right, unless you're self-employed.
Okay, so let's say that I'm 66 years old. What can I apply for? As far as, can I apply for my retirement now?
Yeah, for most people, 66 now is the full retirement age. It used to be 65, and it's slowly being raised. So 66 is right now where most people are reaching full retirement age. You actually can take retirement as early as 62.
Okay.
But that is called early retirement. Any month that you're you're applying for retirement prior to your full retirement age is considered early. The deal with early retirement is you get penalized. They reduce the amount that you're going to receive based on how many months early you take the retirement. And they also then impose an earnings cap. You can work and get early retirement, but you can't earn more than it's about $15,000 a year and still maintain your early retirement. Once you're at full retirement age, though, like 66, like you were saying, there's no cap on earnings. You can get your retirement and you can work, and that's fine. You also can delay retirement past full retirement age up to age 70, and you get a benefit of an increased benefit every month past your full retirement age that you wait. But once you hit 70, there's no more benefit.
Okay. And I believe that if you're born after 1960, the retirement age is 67, right?
Yeah.
And I think you fall in that category.
Yes,
right?
I do. I do.
Stacey, we
Yes.
have a caller in from a woman and an email And she says, I had a heart attack at age 60 and applied for disability benefits. My case is assigned to a judge currently, but I'm now 62. Can I apply for early retirement even though I have a disability claim? And if so, how will it impact my disability claim if I win?
I think you can.
Can you restate the question so we're
Sure. The question was, there's a woman who has a case pending. She filed for disability, and she turned 62 before her case was heard for disability. The case is pending before an administrative law judge, and the question was, can I file for early retirement? And the answer is yes, you can. You're going to get that reduced retirement, as Stacey said, but if eventually your Social Security disability case is approved, you're going to be paid your full amount, retroactive to the date that you began receiving the reduced amount. So, speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about spouses' benefits. I mean, can a wife or a husband who's been married to someone collecting Social Security, can they receive any kind of benefit?
Yes, they can.
What benefit would that be?
They can receive a spousal benefit if their spouse is still living, and it's usually about half of what the retired spouse would get, the working spouse would get.
And that spouse has to be 62, I believe, and the marriage has to last about a year.
Right.
Now, what happens if a spouse dies and they're fully insured? You know what? Let's talk a little bit about what we mean by fully insured, because we spoke about retirement, and you just don't get retirement because you worked. You had to work enough years and contributed enough money. What does that mean to be fully insured for retirement?
So the term that we use is that you have to have 40 quarters of coverage. A quarter is basically, it's a little misleading. It's not...
It's not. You don't have to work 3 months to earn that quarter. You can basically earn it in 1 month or even a couple of weeks.
It's based on how much you earn. So right now, to earn 1 quarter of coverage in 2015, you have to earn $1,220. So if you earned 4 times that in the first month of the year, you would have gotten your 4 quarters for the year. You can only earn 4 quarters per year. So when we say 40 quarters of coverage, it's basically 10 years of work where you've earned enough money to get those 4 quarters.
And it doesn't have to be consecutive, does it? You could earn 3 quarters in 1980 and 4 quarters in 1992, as long as you have 10 years or 4 quarters.
And then the other thing that I think is important for people to understand is that the amount that you will ultimately receive when you retire is going to be based on the amount that you paid taxes on when you were working. So everybody's retirement benefit amount is going to be different. It's going to be based on what they earn. So if you only earned enough to get if you just earn like $1 more than 4 quarters a year, that doesn't mean that you're going to get the same amount of Social Security benefit each month that someone who was earning at a high over $100,000 a year would get.
Exactly. And I think I read that the maximum amount that one can get at age 66 in 2015 is $2,663. If you delay until age 70, then that amount is $3,051. If you retired at age 62, then that amount is about $2,225. So why don't we talk about then, what if you have a little bit of an argument with your spouse and things don't work out as rosy as we'd like them to work out, and you get divorced? What happens to that poor spouse?
Well, a spouse can still get benefits on a divorced spouse can get benefits on their former spouse's record if they were married for 10 years.
Okay. And how old does that applying spouse have to be? Is it 62, I believe?
Yes, I think that's right.
All right.
Unless they're disabled.
Does the marriage have to last a certain amount of time?
10 years.
That's right. You did mention that. And how long do they have to be divorced for? Is that 2 years? I believe it's 2 years they have to be divorced for.
I think that's right.
All right. So, let's talk about something even more dreadful, which is what happens if your spouse predeceases you, they died before you, is there any help for the remaining spouse? Maybe that spouse hasn't worked much or it doesn't have the high income.
That surviving spouse can get survivor's benefits.
Okay.
And if the deceased person had minor children, those children can also get a benefit until they turn 18 or 19 if they're still enrolled in high school.
All right. And so a widow or widower can get benefits as well, right?
Yes.
Is there an age requirement for widows or widowers to get a benefit?
I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head.
I believe it's age 50 if they're disabled.
Right.
And over 60, it's an automatic. What about if your spouse dies and you have minor children? You mentioned that. Do the parents, are there mothers and fathers benefits as well?
Yes. There's a benefit for the surviving spouse if they're caring for the children. But the surviving spouse doesn't have to be 50 or 60.
Right, okay. But and the kids have to be under 16 or under, right?
18.
Okay. And the surviving spouse has to be unmarried, right?
I believe that's correct. The thing I think is important for people to know, I've seen a few cases lately where the parents of a minor child were not married.
Right.
And the father dies and the mother of the child applies for the survivor's benefits, and it can be very challenging to prove that minor child was the child of the deceased man. It's usually a man in this scenario. So if it would have been, it always is helpful to have like an acknowledgement of paternity or putting the father's name on the birth certificate to avoid problems if God forbid someone dies.
Okay. Then there's always, God forbid, if somebody dies, there's a one-time payment, the lump sum death payment.
Yeah, but
which
it's not a lot. It's like $225.
Not enough to bury somebody, unfortunately. Yeah. So let's say that I want to apply for a benefit. What should I do? Where should I go? What steps should I take?
So there's a variety of ways that you can apply for Social Security. The easiest way for people that have access to computers is probably going to be applying online, or at least starting the process online. The Social Security website, which is socialsecurity.gov or ssa.gov, is really user-friendly, and you can set up an account on there, and you can get a lot of information about what your retirement benefit would be at different ages, what your disability benefit would be, so you can make informed decisions. You also can always go to the Social Security office, and there are offices, everywhere. If you want to find where your local Social Security office is, there is a place on the website where you can type in your zip code, and it tells you what the local Social Security office is. There's also an 800 number that Frank always can recite off the top of his head.
1-800-772-1213.
So that's the Social Security 800 number. And they also do a lot of services over the phone, but they will also say, you may find it helpful to go to our website. Right. So I do recommend, if people have access to computers, that they look at the Social Security website. So that's where you can file an application, get the case going. Depending on what type of claim you're filing, it can be very simple. If you're applying for retirement, it's a pretty cut and dry process. Applying for disability can be a little bit more complicated because there's more information that Social Security needs to get in order to file the case.
Well, Stacey, we have a call from an Albany Park woman who says, I agree that Social Security website is great, but why do they take such a long time in getting anything done?
So the question was, why does Social Security take a long time to get things done? I'm not sure if I exactly know the answer to that. My hypothesis would be that Social Security is a huge agency. I think the statistic is 1 out of every 5 people in this country receive some sort of benefit every month from the Social Security Administration. So when you think about how much the Social Security Administration needs to do, that makes things slow. It is a bureaucracy. And especially in terms of disability cases, they are complicated, and there's a lot that goes into adjudicating a disability case. So I think that accounts for some of the delay as well. And so, one thing that I can say is that a lawyer or an advocate can sometimes grease the wheels a little bit to make things work a little bit more efficiently. That's not to say a lawyer can always speed up your case. I mean, sometimes a lawyer can, sometimes a lawyer can't, but speaking with someone that is familiar with these processes and familiar with the agency and familiar with the people who work there can sometimes make the process be a little bit smoother.
I think also to add to Stacey's wonderful answer is that Social Security's had a lot of funding problems recently, so they haven't been able to hire as many people as they need to process these claims. And even the local offices, if you want to go, they used to be open 9 to 4, 5 days a week, and then they shut down 1 hour early and only work half a day on Wednesday. And I believe recently 4 days a week they reopened 9 to 4, but they still have half days on Wednesdays. And sometimes those cases, they just linger and languish on somebody's desk at a local office. So, you brought up Social Security disability, and that's what you and I mostly do a lot of. Most of our clientele are poor souls who can't work because they have an illness, either a mental or physical illness that prevents them from working. And there's no such thing as a temporary disability in Social Security. You and I know that in order to get disability, you have to have an illness that has lasted a year, or it can be expected to last a year and prevent you from working, or God forbid, cause you to die. So what kind of illnesses are we talking about? I just read in the paper that people down in Puerto Rico were getting Social Security because they didn't speak English. Can you get disability just because you don't speak English?
No.
Well, so what kind of things can people get disability for?
I mean, there are a large variety of medical conditions, both physical and mental, or some combination of the two, that are considered disabilities for the purposes of Social Security. I'll give you a couple examples. Okay. A seizure disorder, someone that even with medication is still having a significant amount of seizures every month. That could be considered a disability.
That's key, right? Your illness has to prevent you from working even though you're taking medicine.
Right.
Because otherwise everybody would be on disability, right?
I mean, Social Security is really concerned with people that even with medical treatment that are still having impairments that are keeping them from being able to work.
Okay, so like a back condition, let's say that you have a heart attack. Let's say that you have a bypass, and you were a truck driver, and let's say you're 55 years old, and your doctor says you can't go back and do the truck driving job anymore. But you can do maybe a job as a greeter at Walmart. And let's say that you really don't have much of an education. You finished the 8th grade and you had to drop out to help your parents support themselves. Can someone like that? Do they have a decent Social Security case?
Maybe. It would depend on what this person's limitations are. In terms of their ability to do a variety of different things like standing, walking, sitting, lifting, carrying. The older that people get, especially like in this example where someone was a truck driver, which is considered a pretty physically demanding job, the older people get, especially if they have a physically demanding work history, then it may be easier for that person to get on disability because Social Security doesn't expect people with limited educations that are in their late 50s, that have mid to late 50s, that have physical issues to be just, going into a new career, doing something totally different. But it depends. I mean, it's not
a one-size-fit-all.
No, it definitely isn't.
Okay.
And so I think that speaks to your question about people who only speak Spanish. People that don't speak English, they are limited in the types of jobs that they can obtain.
That's a consideration.
So that is a consideration, but it's not a disability
Right.
in and of itself.
What in your view, what are the most common impairments that people file disability for? Is it the orthopedic problems, you'd say?
I think of physical issues, I would say that back, spinal issues, pain-related issues is one of the most common areas. I also see a lot of mental health cases where...
Let's talk about the mental health cases. How many times in our practice do we hear, oh, Joe down the street is getting it for this and he's got nothing wrong with him, or Steve is getting, disability for anxiety, and I don't see him being all that anxious. He just drinks or he just does drugs. Can you get Social Security disability just because you're abusing alcohol and or drugs?
No, if that's the only issue that you have. Having an addiction to drugs or alcohol, if that is your only disability impairment, that's not considered to be a disability for Social Security purposes. But in my experience, people that have addiction problems usually have some sort of underlying mental health issue, and that might be a disability.
You and I rarely see the person that maybe is portrayed on TV, with the brown bag drinking, and that's all they have. They really do have some sort of underlying psychiatric problem, maybe an anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
And there's been a lot of research and literature discussing how people abuse substances to help combat their problems with mental health.
Stacey, Frank, I hate to interrupt
Yes.
you, but we have a question in here that my parents are getting close to retirement age, and they've been doing some estate planning, but they want to know if there's anybody around town who can do estate planning with respect to Social Security. Is there anybody that you know, or any organization or group that fits in that category?
So I think that's an excellent question. Well, let me repeat the question, which was, do you know of anyone that can help people with estate planning with regard to Social Security? When people are getting closer to retirement age, especially when they're married spouses, I would encourage a person in that situation to speak to someone who can go through different benefit scenarios with them. That's not something that I do. I don't think it's something that Frank does.
No, but I think we both can agree
we
that
know
one of the best gentlemen in this area is Avi Sachs and Skokie. I don't have his number offhand, but I'm sure you can Google him.
Yeah, so I would recommend that if you're looking for that type of counsel, that you speak with an elder law attorney, like Avi Sachs, this gentleman that we're referring to. You can also call the CBA. They have an attorney referral number, and they can point you in the direction of an attorney that concentrates their practice in elder law. I think we should talk before we run out of time about SSI, or supplemental security income. Frank, can you explain what that is?
There's about 4.9 million people in the U.S. Collecting SSI, supplemental security income. That doesn't come out of the trust fund like Social Security, disability, or retirement benefits. That comes out of general revenue. In order to get that, it's the same criteria. You have to meet the same criteria that a disabled person does under the disability program. You have to show you're disabled, but you also have to show that you have low resources and low income. So I think one of our esteemed colleagues, Dave Bryant Sr., said you have to be dirt poor in order to get SSI.
Is that a legal term?
Yeah, no.
Dirt poor?
That's what us lawyers who live on the vines call it. But generally speaking, if you have more than if you're single and you have more than $2,000 in income, in assets, thank you, then you're not going to qualify for that. And if you're married and you have more than, together as a couple, more than $3,000, then you don't qualify. So let's talk a little bit about this disability process, if you don't mind. You can file an initial application online, right?
Right.
At the local Social Security office.
Right.
So how long does it take for Social Security to decide after you file an initial application whether you're disabled. And in Illinois, where does that application go to? Who looks at that application?
So once you file your application, if you live in Illinois, it's going to be sent to Springfield, and it will be assigned to a person in Springfield who's going to work the case up and collect medical records and develop your case, get whatever type of evidence that person thinks is necessary to make a decision, and then the case will be reviewed by an internal physician who works for Social Security to figure out whether they think you meet the criteria for disability or not. That process, I tell people right now, I think it's taking between 4 and 6 months,
Right.
but it varies from case to case. And then most people get denied, we should say. I don't know right
About
now.
38%, I'd say.
Get
I
approved.
believe. Get approved,
right.
That's right, thank you. Don't you think that it would be important that an individual contact an attorney or representative immediately in the system, because you and I know what kind of evidence that Social Security is looking for. We know, we've been doing this for a while, we know what it takes to prove a
Right.
specific type of impairment, and there's tricky issues that can arise in some of these cases, don't you think?
Yes, definitely.
Like what?
I think, I'm a lawyer, so maybe I'm
Sure.
biased, but I do think that a lawyer and advocate can help make sure that the adjudicator gets a full picture of your case, which I'm not sure that without the assistance of a lawyer, they're always going to get a full picture of what's going on with you.
Your treating doctor,
Right.
treating doctor's input, maybe school records if the person has a
Correct.
long-standing disability, veterans records,
Right.
witness statements,
All sorts
all
of
sorts of
things.
good stuff,
Stacey
right?
Yes.
And Frank, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but we have an email from Chicago Ridge, and a man wants to know, who apparently is already on SSI, but he's gotten a notice in the mail 2 weeks ago about they're going to review his case and maybe knock him off Social Security. What should he do, and what's the process involved here?
So it's likely that what's happening to this gentleman, who he got a notice that he's getting reviewed and they're going to determine whether he still qualifies for benefits, is
And
going
the question was,
right.
what should I do?
So he's probably going through what we call a continuing disability review. He should contact a lawyer. I would recommend. He also should
Absolutely.
contact Social Security right away, because you can opt to keep your, I'm sorry, they haven't cut him off yet, they're just reviewing him. So he should communicate with Social Security. If they need him to sign a release form or anything like that, he should do that promptly, because if he doesn't comply with that, they may deny him right away.
Yeah. Before he does that, I would also should suggest that he make a list of every single doctor that he's seen since the last time his file was reviewed. Every single medication that he's taken, every single hospitalization that he's encountered or endured, because that's what they're going to ask him.
Right.
And hopefully, I'm sure you and I tell our clients we want them to get better, we want them to be able to go back to work, but it's important for individuals to continue to see their doctors in order to establish that their disability is continuing.
Right.
And most people think that you get disability just by seeing one doctor once, but that's not how, in my experience, how
Absolutely.
people are approved.
And in the situation of this person, if he ends up getting another notice saying that they're going to be terminating his benefits, he should contact Social Security right away to file an appeal and to request that they continue his benefits during the appeal process if that's what he wants. And he should contact a lawyer at that point if he hasn't already.
So, Stacey, this time has just flown by
Yes.
again. It's really nice to have seen you, and thank you so much for talking about Social Security
Thank you,
disability.
Frank. Thanks
And,
to the CBA
yeah.
for having us here today.
I hope we can do this again real soon, okay?
Absolutely.
Take care.